Greetings and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here at Sport 101, we expand our conversation to include the history, past, and in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago's other shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app, the only Black-owned sports talk app in the United States. You can watch and listen to my show as well as the many other shows. Keep up with breaking sports news, and if you miss something, don't worry. You can listen to a podcast or watch a video via the YouTube channel. Search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, we want you to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. This week, we would like to discuss the aquatics origins of West Africa. Most people, when you think of swimming, it's a common American pastime versus leisurely as well as professionally, and as thousands of Americans have enjoyed for centuries. What most people don't know is that fewer African Americans either don't know how to swim or swim on a regular basis in the United States than Americans of any other race. Sadly, drowning is the number 2 cause of unintentional injury related death between children ages 1 through 14 in America. So this is a pandemic for all children, and particularly those of African American descent. African Americans between the ages of 5 and 14 are 3.2 times more likely to drown than white children of the same age. So just take a look back and look at those numbers right there. If you're 3.2 times more likely, that means there's going to be so many more instances when you're around water, just based off of not being familiar with water or knowing what to do when you fall in water or how to, respect it being around water. Studies were conducted at the University of Memphis, and it was found that 70% of African American children did not know how to swim at all. So that's 70% of children. Again, that's a number that's too high with so much water and different things that you're around. That's just a percentage I would not like to play with. Similarly, only 3% of the members of the United States Swimming Association, that's the nation's governing body of swimming, is made up of people of color today. So we see the lack of swimming being perpetuated throughout the college all the way up to the professional ranks. Many African Americans today have lower swimming ability than Americans of other races. Their descendants, however, the West Africans, were recognized as some of the best swimmers in the world before coming to America against their will in the transatlantic transfer or theft of humans. Swimming was stamped out of the African American culture because of effects of slavery and racism on the African American community. Before the show, myself and Greg Maya were talking, and we were talking about, coming from the West Coast of what, even though it's a continent, being surrounded by so much water, it's essentially a large island. You would think that, swimming would be more prevalent. But then I was trying to tell them that, once, we got on these shores, there was still prevalence in swimming. And I gave a story about how when I was in grad school, going to Grambling on Interstate 20, you have to cross the Mississippi River. And that's not a small river. So if you got people running away, you have to have some type of aquatic knowledge to navigate crossing these certain bodies of water. And as people move to larger cities and Jim Crow hit, not being allowed access to pools, you start to see more fire hydrants being bust open in neighborhoods versus being able to swim in a pool, and obviously there's no uh, lake or anything to swim in because you're not in the country. So limited access within a short amount of time let people leave something that was culturally in their blood since the beginning of time, again, coming from West Africa. And how can I say that? Because at the start of the 17th century, West Africans were often considered to be the world's best swimmers. And this was in particularly by Europeans that would come at this time to trade in West Africa. West Africans, again, grew up around oceans, rivers, lakes, where they learn to swim at very different young ages. About the same time they learn to walk. That's very important because those are three different bodies of water with three different types of current. So, again, my first time going to the beach at Myrtle Beach when I was in college, it was my first time going to the ocean. I got in the water and I started swimming one area, and I ended up way down the other end because I wasn't used to current. So having knowledge of different types of bodies of water at a young age could definitely help you, especially if you use that water for commerce, which is something that we'll discuss a little later. European explorers or conquistadors often commented on their swimming ability. Oftentimes, at the beginning, these were from Portugal. Again, the world was divided in half. So you had Spain, which was colonizing the Western world, and Portugal, which was colonizing, Africa and places in that hemisphere due to the Papal Bull of Demarcation, which was issued by the Catholic Church in 1492. This was strange to Europeans at the time, how the aquatic ability they had, and also the different styles they use in the water. The most common style they swam was what we call today a freestyle stroke. This you had to be very strong to swim this stroke, and particularly in the ocean because the currents are so strong. And it's the most efficient stroke, but again, at this time, most people didn't do it because they didn't have the strength to do that. Most people in Europe swam the breaststroke. It was slower and it was least efficient, again, because you're not moving in a linear fashion. You're moving and trying to make a light bulb with your legs and doing a flapping motion with your arms. So which slows you down because it creates drag in the water. So again, it's not the most efficient stroke, but the Europeans noticed how strong they were and how fast they swam. There was a Dutch colonizer named Pieter de Maris, and he said Africans from the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast is typically the area around Ghana or ancient Carthage, which was known for its large deposits of gold. Henceforth the Gold Coast. And he, again, this Dutch colonizer or conquistador, Pieter de Maris, said that Africans from the Gold Coast, their freestyle swimming allowed them to swim very fast, and they generally outdid people of our nation, not only in swimming, but diving in well. On top of this, there were also several ethnic groups in West Africa that were such good swimmers that they invented surfing independent of Polynesian influence. Again, most people, when we think of surfing, we think of Hawaii, the surf movies, tiki huts, things of that nature that are very commercial but are not historical to the origins of aquatics and surfing. The Africans influenced these Polynesians, as the Polynesians are descendants of Africans. If you spoke to anyone from Samoa, they would tell you that their culture pretty much bans them. If you don't marry someone else with in the Polynesian culture, you're allowed to marry someone of African descent or you'll get shunned. And then I also have some historical references as well to back up my statements. The picture right here I'm going to show you is King Kamehameha I. King Kamehameha united the Hawaiian Islands as a nation in April of 1810. Now here's a second picture of King Kamehameha. That was a statue of him. If you could put that second picture up, Greg, this is what he looked like in real life. And obviously, um, we would consider him a black man in the United States. And you can see how he was personified in statue form. Next, I want to show you the last queen of Hawaii, Queen Liliuokalani. Queen Liliuokalani is the last queen of Hawaii before Hawaii was annexed by America and its businessmen in 1893. So this is a picture of Queen Liliuokalani when she was a little girl, and you can see her hair. Obviously, that's a black woman right there. If you can show the next picture of her, Greg, as she got older. This is Queen Liliuokalani as she's older. You can see her hairstyle resembles, any black woman of that time and era. And some people still wear that hairstyle today. If you, you may be in the deep South or, in church or whatever, but, I still see that hairstyle from time to time. So you can see this is evidence that the Hawaiians or the indigenous people to the Hawaiian Islands are of African descent. There is still a Hawaii for the Hawaiians movement. Again, Hawaii was overthrown and annexed by the United States in 1893 against the will of the people. So they have a Hawaii for the Hawaiians movement to give the sovereignty back to the native Hawaiians. There is a Hawaii tribe or ethnic group or cultural group throughout the different islands that initially were unified by King Kamehameha I. Queen Liliuokalani's last name was Kamehameha, which showed her lineage to his line. And again, if you saw the picture of her, that's clearly a black woman as the last queen of Hawaii. Again, so getting back to surfing, a popular history of surfing will tell you that it was invented in the Polynesian Islands and that the first account of surfing was written in Hawaii in 1778 from historians Bruce Brown, Robert August, and Mike Henson introduced surfing into West Africa. But all these are incorrect. The modern surf culture currently developing among Africa's long shoreline is nothing new, and it's more of a Sankofa or a rebirth into something we have done historically since the beginning of time, remembering and reimagining thousands-year-old and older traditions. Again, the first known account of surfing was written during the 1640s and what is now Ghana, which is the old present day, the ancient empire of Carthage. Carthage is known for its military leader, Hannibal Barca, and his father in their wars against Rome, which were called the Punic Wars. If you look at history, Rome was able to annex Eastern Africa and going into Egypt, Ethiopia, and those lands, but they fought to a standstill with Carthage and actually respected them and traded with them because yet they were not able to take them militarily. So that was a great feat for ancient Ghana, also known as Carthage, stopping the Roman Empire at its tracks. So that's another also history for individuals of West Africa to let you know that our history starts way before 1490s and the beginnings of the transatlantic chattel stealing of our ancestors. Again, these first known stories or origins of surfing are from the 1640s, and they started in Ghana and developed moving into Senegal and Angola. And here's a picture of West Africa, so you got to get an image of what I'm talking about. So if you can see these countries right here, all around the coast of West Africa. So you can see going from Senegal to the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ghana, Benin, Togo, Nigeria, all around the west coast of Africa. Looking at the continent as a whole, Africa possesses thousands of miles of warm, surf-filled waters and populations of strong swimmers and seagoing fishermen and merchants who know these surf patterns like the back of their hand, and they crew canoes capable of catching and riding wave patterns up to 10 feet high. Why did they have to use canoes? Because the waves were so large. You can take it down now, Greg. Thank you. The waves were so large going towards the beach that large ships could not enter. I remember this is a 1640, so there's no modern ports at the time to aid in large ships coming in to unload their docks. So most of the times the ship would anchor, and they would send in small ships to port, which was the port at that time was actually just ahead of the beach. So if you look at this first video right here, you'll see a little history of what I'm talking about in regards to the West African origins of aquatics and surfing and swimming.
Hi, I'm Salema Masakela. My team at Mami Wata and myself are putting together the first ever book that will document the entirety of African surf culture, Afro surf, as we call it. It's going to be curated by the greatest writers and photographers in and around the continent. As fired up as we are, we can't do this without you, which is why we are doing this project via Kickstarter. We need to produce a minimum of 500 books to make this project happen. We're using Kickstarter to cover the book's production costs. After that, all further profits from sales of Afro Surf goes to support the groundbreaking work of African surf therapy organizations, Waves for Change, and Surfers Not Street Children. Put your name on the list for this book, a book that I believe will redefine and expand how the world looks at and defines surf culture.
Again, so that book is going to put you into the mindset of the world's oldest surf culture, which is in the west coast of Africa. A lot of those organizations that Mr. Masakea spoke of are very impactful as they help the youth, not only physically, but mentally. As you know, some of these countries, in particular Liberia in recent years, have went through civil wars. Civil wars are pretty much normal in most countries, especially if there's outside influence being used to influence the natural resources, which happens in most countries in West Africa. Usually the outside influences from the West, and the natives obviously disagree with that. So when you look at these countries, sometimes they use child soldiers, and a lot of these organizations are used as therapy to bring these child soldiers, back into the modern realm. Some of the things they did when they were child soldiers, one thing that was popular was called brown, where they would mix cocaine and gunpowder, and it would, keep them up and develop a nasty disposition, and just, getting their minds back from, going to war as a child soldier. So these organizations are very important. So I encourage everyone to purchase that book and again learn about the world's first surf culture, which is in West Africa. So to just tell you about the area or the demographics where these people learn to surf, the West Africans surfed on 3 to 5 foot long wooden surfboards in a prone, sitting, or kneeling or standing position. Those are all standard positions that we use today. And they also use small one-person canoes if they didn't want to surf, or they had to pick up some food, again, for commerce, because the water was not only used for leisure, but for economics as well. The West Africans also rode long surfboards called longboards, about 12 feet long, and used them to pedal several miles. If you look at this picture right here, this is an example of a West African longboard. Okay, so if you look at this right here, you can see now this gentleman is approximately around 6 feet tall, and this surfboard right here is about double his size. Again, there's different types of surfboards depending on what you wanted to do, or your skill, how deep you wanted to go into the ocean. or what, as I say, the larger waves you were trying to get. Sometimes the heavier boards were needed due to the season. Remember, the people in West Africa knew the water so well they could read the currents. There's a current in West Africa at a certain time of year. If you just get into it, it drops you off on the coast of Florida. These currents were used throughout history. The ancient pharaohs from Kemet have been known to go to vacation on the Mississippi River. If you look at the Washita people of Mississippi, um, and the mound pyramids they built in homage to the Egyptians, as well as different artifacts found, clearly back up these statements. So again, these currents were known and used for multiple things. There was an English anthropologist named Robert Rattray, and he provided the best description of photographs of these paddle boards on Lake Basatwimi, which is located about 100 miles inland of Cape Coast, Ghana. In this place, the lake, again, it was a cultural place for the Asante people. That was their cultural region of Ghana, and they believed that it was an anthropomorphic lake god named Twi that prohibited canoes on the lake. So the lake was so sacred, a canoe or paddling a canoe will upset the natural balance of the area. Again, these people were very spiritual, and most of them practice something similar to Ifa or Voodoo. What people don't understand is in Ifa and Voodoo, there's the characters represent elements of nature or energy. So it's not, everyone knows that like a Oshun is not real, but the elements that she represents of water and femininity and birth. So you pay homage to the water, or like a Shango is not for real, but a warrior spirit, lightning. There's been a lot of deities that represent lightning. But that's a different show for a different day. But again, there was that's what Twi was to the Asante in this lake region. So to not upset this natural habitat, they would not use canoes. So keeping with the divine sanctions, people would use surfboards and called Padua or Mbadua if there was a plural, and they used them to traverse this 5-mile wide lake, and they would take goods across. They would travel across to the different sides, and again, paddling was prohibited because this was a sacred body of water. There was a German merchant adventurer, Michael Himmersam. He provided the first known record of surfing, which was problematic as he described a sport that was new to him. Again, Europeans are seeing surfing as new to them, yet this has been going on in West Africa for thousands of years. He believed that he was watching Gold Coast children who are probably from the Fonte cultural group at the Cape Coast area of Ghana. He thought they were being taught to swim, and he wrote down in his diary, he said he saw parents tie their children to boards and throw them in the water. And other Europeans had similar descriptions. And again, if you look at a modern surfboard, you have to tie it to yourself in case you wipe out, you don't lose your board and it goes somewhere else in the ocean. So that's what parents were doing to their children to teach them how to surf, but he didn't see that before. So he thought the boards were, to help them to swim, but they were really just getting used to surfing. Remember the different postures we talked about. You can kneel, you can sit, you can stand, or you can be in like a 6-point position, like you're about to fire off on a sled. Again, most of the West Africans learned to swim when they're around 16 months old. So they were learning how to swim and walk at the same time. There was another account in 1834. James Alexander was visiting Accra, Ghana, and he wrote down from the beach, it might be seen boys swimming into the sea with light boards under their stomachs. They would wait for a surf and then come rolling in like a cloud on top of it. So again, this is another description of a European in 1834 witnessing West African surfing, which is again proving this West African surf culture. There was also accounts of people body surfing at this time, which is if you ever been to a wave pool, you go out and if you try to catch a wave and swim on top of it and ride it with your body until it dissipates out into the beach or the beginning of the wave pool. In 1887, there was an English traveler who watched an African man named Sua in his element in the water, dancing up and down and doing fancy tricks on a surfboard. And the man said as if he had lived in the water since he was a child, and he was more comfortable in the water than he was dry land. That's how good Sua was on the surfboard in 1887. Again, outside of leisure, surfing was a means for opening economic opportunities. It allowed the West Africans to understand the surf zones so they can traverse up and down the coast in canoes. Because have you ever been down a large body of water, especially going through different, parts of a country? There's usually tributaries, and if there's no dam or to help boats across, there would be like rapids that you go through. So it's usually small ships that can make it, and that's what they would use to go down the coast as well as go out into the ocean. After understanding these surf zones, remember they understood the current that would take you to Florida. And again, if you read Ivan Van Sertima's, they came before Columbus. It would detail the West African history in America before Christopher Columbus ever set sail. Again, these people would design surf canoes that can break through the waves, and they would launch them from the beaches. They were fast and agile, and they were able to hold some goods. So similar to if you look at the natives from Alaska, they made different things for their environment. These West Africans were very nautical savvy and not only could swim, but had boats that can traverse the water so they could, move about and make money. Surfing was an intergenerational transmission of wisdom that transformed surf zones into social and cultural pleasures. So passing down this knowledge would, help your family if you had certain fishing holes that you would go to, just like fishermen in any other country now. So it was kind of sacred in its sense, being in the water. These African youth used the ocean as their classroom. Again, learning these surf zones and seeing and feeling how the ocean and push them pulled against their bodies so they can know how to maneuver. The youth learned about wavelengths, and a wavelength is the distance between waves. So if you count the wavelengths, you can kind of see the physics of swimming and moving in the ocean, and the breakers when they form, the minutes and intervals between it, so you can know how to traverse in the sea. More importantly, the surfing taught the youth that to catch the waves, they had to match their speed. So it was a lot of sports science involved with this before sports science was ever created. Because learning this and say, okay, I just can't be still and catch this wave. I need to speed up. So when the wave gets to me, I'm already moving. So that way I can get on top of it and quote unquote ride it. Getting to the house of the wave, as surfers say. And this is something that the Western world didn't learn until the 19th century, how to speed up and really catch waves. And again, people were doing it in Africa thousands of years ago. Englishmen noted that when they would come to the beach, that the children would count the waves, and then they would know when to paddle safely in or stay in the water. Sometimes they would wait for the largest waves to come just to have fun, because children, it's exciting to them. At this time, there was also very few energy sources. So when society started to harness wind, animal, and hydroelectric power, these West Africans used these waves to slingshot these canoes, and they would be laden with fish and cargo ashore. So they would have some canoes that would no be no human in, but they would again count the cycles of the waves lengths, see a wave come and put a canoe in it, and it would come to the shore full with goods. So it was like a modern day assembly line. It was just using hydro electricity or using the water per se. Um, and this also used to bridle the waves as to help with with labor. So if I'm using the water to move things, that I'm not using my body, so I'm not getting tired, so I can get more work done. They also use surf canoes like taxis. So they had surf canoes that were real big, and they were just like taxis, or they had some that were like trucks that would carry things, um, and they would transport things and individuals from ship to shore. Um, and this is before the modern ports were constructed. And this is, like I said, going back to the 1400s. Some of the surf canoe men that wanted to make a lot of money, they would attach a chair to the front of their canoes because they knew that the European passengers were scared of drowning, so they would have a chair so they can sit in. So also to capitalize on this, um, um, because again a lot of the waters were shark infested because the ships had to park or dock so far out, excuse me, not park, um, that the canoes had to go out in shark infested waters to pick up goods and then bring people to the land. So the Europeans always thought they were going to drown in the water. So the West Africans used this knowledge to their advantage to make money. They would inflate the tips received by passengers, by taking them on like bad routes to get to the same destination, basically like a nautical game of chicken. Paul Isert observed this once on October 16th. He wrote down in 1783 at Christianberg Castle in Accra. So before I start the example, again, he's at Christianberg Castle. Christianberg Castle was a building designed to harness enslaved Africans on their journey across the Atlantic. So to say that these people are coming ashore for good means is definitely not the case. And these individuals, teasing them to make money, I wholeheartedly support it at this time because, again, they were in the business of kidnapping people. So these African canoesmen, they would do a ritual where they would make an offering to the sea. They would bless the boat or the longboard or canoe that they were on, and they would leave from the ship, taking people or goods to land. And then sometimes they would torment the Europeans by taking them through breaking waves multiple times so they can get a bigger trip, because it would be a difficult to the European, but he just knows the water's just coming over you. It's nothing, but if you want this person to feel peril, and I'm thank God that I made it to the beach. Here's triple your pay. And a lot of people did that at this time because, again, um, they were kidnapping people. And oftentimes these canoesmen would end up kidnapping themselves. It went from, taking people to them being taken themselves. So, again, this was a dirty business at the time that the world should study more intimately. These trips resulted in these cultural or ethnic groups resulting in large tips of rum, tobacco, and guns. And oftentimes they were used to fight against other ethnic groups. Because just like if you look at the French and Indian War within the United States, the Europeans pitted ethnic groups against each other, which allowed them to infiltrate more into the interior. A lot of these surf canoes were sacred objects, and they were carved with iron tools from sacred silk cottonwood trees. The cottonwood tree would seal very good, and was watertight and was flexible and light and could move in water. So they were used for a lot of surfboards and these sacred canoes, again, because the ocean was a spiritual place, and learning the ocean, becoming one with it, it will protect you and will allow you to take from its bounty to feed your family and make money. The surf canoes often had a gender. They would be male or female. Again, in African spirituality, it differs from the European system. If there's a male deity or god, there's a female deity or god. And again, in African spirituality, it is known that the people are not real. They're anthropomorphic representations of nature. So again, that's a difference. So the canoes would have both genders, and the tree's soul would continue to dwell in the canoes. And it was said that it would communicate with the water spirits, based on who had the canoe, how you treated it, what type of person you were to the water, what you extracted from the water, how you treated it, were you at one with everything. Also, they believe that one way to the ancestral realm was at the bottom of the ocean, and it was populated with spirits and deities or manifestations of deities, because again, the water was very powerful and throughout history was respected, and a lot of even myths were talked about it, and because every ancient society has a flood story. Fishermen and maritime merchants would make sacrifices to surf canoes and to these aquatic deities, who rewarded them with safe passage and prosperous journeys. People from Senegal to South Africa and as far inland as the Dogon people of Mali and Burkina Faso believed in deities who resemble mermaids, with Mami Wata. Again, that's the name of a club we'll look at later, which means mother water, and that's being the most celebrated of these Fen deities. And here's a picture of a Mami Wata right here. And again, the Mami Wata is known that it's not real. It's just a representation, because the water can be very powerful, but it also gives life. So it's feminine in nature. So you have a lot of deities or anthropomorphic representations of females that just basically mean water, from Oshun to Mami Wata. Again, so Mami Wata is associated with the Orisha of the Vodun or Ifa culture. Again, where individuals, unlike the European religions, make the gods real. These are just elements of nature, as I explained earlier. The University of California history professor Kevin Dawson knows a thing about this long-standing connection between African people and the ocean. If you look at the screen, he has his book, Undercurrents of Power, Aquatic Culture in the African Diaspora. So I encourage everyone to get this. And if you can see the picture right there on the cover, you see people out in the ocean transversing boats when the rest of the world was scared of the water. They thought the earth was flat and you could fall off, hence the terms New World. So that's a great read. I encourage everyone to get. There's an African surf brand called Mami Wata, and it set out to make a gorgeous book about Afro surf that we just talked about earlier, and it was going to shed light into these surfing roots. So if we could remember that video that we talked about, just think of that and going back to thousands of years, just getting this culture that a lot of people forgot or doesn't know existed to the masses. And not only will show what happened before the transatlantic and trans-Saharan slave trades, but a history not only of maritime knowledge, but science and how to get your body and the boards to do these things, but understanding tides as well as how to manipulate the water to your advantage. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll move into our next portion of the West African origins of aquatics will go into more into swimming. So thank you for tuning in with me. I will see you right after the break.
What a play by Bill Russell!
I just arrived to get my COVID shot, and this is one shot I won't block.
Gratitude to a great ball club for courageous efforts.
No Celtics were harmed during my shot. Let's do this together. To learn more about vaccines, visit cdc.gov.
Autism is a spectrum disorder. This means it affects each and every person differently. People with autism explore the world in unique ways. It's time to start seeing autism from a new perspective. I'm Megan Sinisi, Miss Central Pennsylvania, asking you to pledge to be an acceptance ambassador today at FromANewPerspective.org. With your help, we can inspire a community of inclusion for the 3.5 million Americans living with autism.
Accept, respect, empower.
Hi, thank you, and welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and again, this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here at Sport 101, we look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, and also through the lens of history, looking at sport from the past, present, and in the making. Again, please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago while following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Again, today we're talking about the aquatic origins of West Africa. Before break, we mainly focused on surfing, but now I'd like to talk about swimming. Before we do that, there's another video I would like to show that talks about a surf community in Liberia. It's very impactful. If you can show that for a minute, Greg, please.
Let's go surfing.
Welcome to a surfer's paradise in Africa. This is Robot Sport. Here, the Atlantic Ocean provides waves all year round, but it's still unknown to many. Princess has taken up surfing for the first time a year ago, and she's already the second best female surfer in Liberia.
I watch our boys doing it one more time. I watch them surfing. I don't want to look at them. I love the sport. I try to join it.
But without any support, Princess would never have learned how to surf.
So whenever you get into the water, you hold your boat in this thing.
A few years ago, a group of surfers decided to give back to the community. They teach the children how to surf for free, but on one condition: they go to school.
As a surfer, you need to go surfing, you need to go to school. You know, it's not only surfing, but you need to advance yourself in education. That's how we go around encouraging the kids, making them know that surfing can get them to another level.
James has been catching waves since he was 6. And 3 years later, even if it's not always easy, he still loves it.
I'm the youngest surfer for Liberia. We go every day after school, we change, we come, we start training. After training, we get in the water, we go surf. It makes me feel fun.
The children use some surfboards left behind by tourists when they leave. There is not enough for everyone, so they share. And it's all about sharing.
It's to share my passion, my passion to other people, because for me, I won't remain as the way I am now today. I'm going to get old one day, and when I get old, I would like for other people to share with other people.
Elijah has been surfing for more than 10 years. He takes part in competitions and says the encouragement he had made a big difference.
My instructor was so nice to me, always encouraging me in surfing, always telling me that you guys should keep on trying surfing better and better. Most you surf, most you get better and better.
For these youngsters, surfing is more than a sport. It's also a way to escape and to dream big.
When I'm into the water, I forget about everything. I feel comfortable in the water. I don't think on nothing. I dream about it every time I go there. I think about surfing because I wish to learn it better.
Here, everyone hopes that surfing will continue to become more and more popular, and that it will encourage more tourists to come and visit this beautiful, untouched area.
All right, so Greg, again, this is our producer, Greg Robbins, coming in. We've been talking about surfing so far. I know you wanted to get into swimming, but before that, what are your thoughts going in? I know you and Maya had a little discussion beforehand, but a lot of people, and again, before I researched this, I wasn't this knowledgeable on the subject matter, but it's a deep history of surfing that comes from the West Coast, and where we come from, a lot of people don't know about.
You're right. It's something that most people in America probably consider a luxury, or they think it's something more for leisure. But as you broke down in the historical facts, it's something that was used for economical gain. It was for survival, or just being able to have the water savvy was just a way of life that they had as a necessity, not necessarily a luxury. So
Definitely. We also discussed swimming. Again, Greg is in Chicago right now, and we were talking about the lack of ability to swim, and particularly on the South Side. Could you talk about that for a little, Greg?
yeah, I feel in the city you have a lot of park districts in the 80s and sometimes in the 90s, but I feel like over the years there's still a lack of heightened awareness for the need or necessity to swim. And I believe most people, when they get to high school, they're too late to get introduced to it. I feel like they can be introduced to it as a younger age. So one thing about water is as you get older, you probably grow more of a fear for it. But as a youth, you're not going to have that much of a fear for it. So it probably is better to have that awareness at a younger age to introduce kids to swimming or the concept of being able to survive in water. So once they get it as a young age, it's not that hard once they're older.
I definitely can relate. When I was in undergrad, I shout out to Campus Hills Pool, Durham, North Carolina, Parks and Recs Aquatics, Mile Atkinson, Harvey Hinton III, Big Note, some of the lifeguards. It was a urban area, and a lot of times when we taught our classes, we were teaching young Black children, how to swim. And I can remember a story. One of my classes, the first thing I used to have to do is get the children to splash on each other. And one of the moms was complaining, like, I paid $40 for you to splash water, tell the kids to splash water on each other's faces. And I had to explain to her, I had to ignore at the time, but what my progression was I would tell the kids, you just splash water in each other's faces for 5 minutes. You didn't hold your nose. So you got to unthink what your parents taught you. Hold your nose when you jump in the water, because you hold your nose, you can't swim. You need your hands. So just that one activity right there will ease a lot of tensions about water that their parents have built in them for years. Just splash the water in their face, and they're realizing if I breathe and push air out my nose, then water can't get in my nose. I don't got to hold it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a great segue to going into what we're talking about the aquatics origins, or particular swimming of West Africa. So by the start of the 17th century, swimming had become ingrained in the culture of many West African communities. It was a social event to relax and be together. Climbing encouraged swimming as a way to cool down. In the 1740s, is recorded that some of the slave traders captured Jeffrey Brace when he and his friends were swimming in a local river. West Africa had not developed the same standards of modesty for women that they had in Europe, and African women were allowed to swim nude. It was custom, um, and particularly if you weren't married. Obviously, if you were married, you didn't want to be uncovered sometimes in public, but it was common for teenage girls, preteen girls to swim nude. In contrast to West Africans during this time, Europeans were very poor swimmers. Uh, Before medieval times, many Europeans had strong swimming abilities, especially Greeks and Romans, and the swimming abilities related to their closeness to West Africa and the bathing in their cultures. Bathing in Europe started in Greece and Rome and then went throughout Europe because due to the climate and necessities, bathing wasn't an everyday or every week thing. Europeans from these times knew how to do the freestyle. Julius Caesar was famous for his swimming abilities, and it was an activity of high regard or of high lifestyle. Um, Swimming declined among Europeans from the medieval period into the 19th century as civilization began to spread from the Mediterranean deeper into Europe. Changes in war favored heavy armored knights, and it diminished the importance of learning to swim because the armor made that impossible. Well, before it was a necessity, because in the Mediterranean and Africa, people fought with curved swords, sometimes spears, but they wore light clothing. What they did was armor their elephants. Again, Hannibal Barca was famous for his armed elephants, which were modern day tanks. And his battles with Rome were in one episode of the Punic Wars. It was several wars over years. He attacked Rome from the back, so he marched through the Swiss Alps with war elephants, but had to stop because a lot of the elephants died in the wintertime because he was going to catch them by surprise, and reinforcements didn't come in time. So the elephants and the animals were more armored than the warriors in West Africa and the Mediterranean. The European doctors also began to disencourage swimming, and some Catholic Church officials called it immoral because it was done nude. Again, as Christianity began to spread at this time, a lot of things were frowned on, especially that were deemed frivolous, and particularly sports, because it wasn't honoring the version of Christianity that was created and that was out at the time. So swimming was frowned upon. A lot of the Europeans, when you got into mainland Europe, believed in water monsters such as the Loch Ness monster, so that even heightened their fear of getting in the water. All of these factors diminish their desire to swim. When you look at America, again, before the Civil War, there were more people of African descent that knew how to swim than Europeans in America, which again suggests what we learned earlier, that was not uncommon in this culture for people to swim. The Underground Railroad, some people say, was named because of a slave named Tice Davids, who ran away by swimming. So that's the way he got around. So they called it the Underground Railroad. And that's just a story, but a lot of people say it though. He was rumored to have been swimming across the Ohio River to freedom while his owner was chasing him in a boat. So he kind of like stayed underneath the boat the whole time and got across the Ohio River, which means he was coming from like Kentucky, into Ohio towards the western Pennsylvania region. When the owner lost sight of him, thinking he had drowned, he joked the slave must have taken the Underground Railroad. Again, that was a term used for death because a lot of people were scared of water at the time. These owners of enslaved Africans soon began to realize that swimming was also a viable means of escape. So they were banned from going to the water. Later on, you start to see different songs talk about wading in the water, telling people how to get rid of their scent that was on their clothes so the dogs couldn't track them. and again to follow certain stars to the north to gain a resemblance of freedom. In the late 19th century, drowning became a huge health issue among Europeans. This led the Europeans to begin efforts to learn how to swim and begin to change their views about swimming. Um, Again, this didn't happen to the 19th century because before then, um, due to the laws in America, individuals of African descent were doing the majority of the work. During the reign of King George III, he would take his monthly bath in the ocean, and it began, and swimming gradually became, or bathing became, a activity for the rich, something they would do once a month during this time in Europe. In addition, the modesty standards from the Victorian era began to loosen. People of European descent began more willing to show their bodies in order to swim. Also, doctors would endorse swimming and salt air is good for the body and soul, which also encouraged swimming at the time. It wasn't until 1912 that Western society really began to use the freestyle stroke again. And again, that was a stroke developed by West Africans due to their ability to be strong in those ocean currents. As segregation and Jim Crow continued to divide, blacks and whites after slavery, the African Americans were given little access to pools, which me and Greg were talking about. Reports then began to publish that African Americans were physically not made to swim because they had bone density issues. In my lifeguard training, I was told that I have a heavy bone density, which is why I'm a sink heavier than the white people that were at the training. Swimming became an Olympic sport in 1896, but an African American did not qualify for the United States Olympic team till Anthony Irvin, who was pictured right here. Anthony Irvin qualified for the United States Olympic team in 2000. So here's a picture of Anthony Irvin right here for you. All right, so and Anthony Irvin in 2000, Irvin won a gold medal in the 50 freestyle and a silver in the 4x1 freestyle. In 2012, he placed fifth in the 50-meter freestyle. In 2016, he came back and did the Summer Olympics at age 35 and won the 50 free, becoming the oldest Olympic medal winner in history. Cullen Jones, who is pictured right here, he holds the world record as a member of the American 4x1 freestyle team. In the 2008 United States Olympic trials, Jones broke the American record in the 50-meter freestyle with a time of 21.59 seconds. If you ever saw one of Cullen Jones' races, he's known for his strength. He is tall like most swimmers. He is 6'5". However, his strength when he does his freestyles, like he's floating on top of the water. And if you ever watch Cullen Jones race, if you haven't, after the show, please Google Cullen Jones race. In the 2012 Summer Olympics, he won silver medals in the 4x1 freestyle relay and the 50-meter freestyle, as well as gold in the 4x1 medley. You have Simone Manuel, who's pictured next. In 2016 at the Rio Olympics, she won 2 gold and 2 silver medals for United States women. So she was an African-American woman doing it big on the highest level. Again, she won gold in the 100-meter freestyle and a 4x1 medley. And she also won silver in the 50 free and the 4x1 freestyle relay. In winning the 100-meter freestyle, tied with Penny Olisic of Canada, Simone Manuel became the first African-American woman to win the individual Olympic gold in swimming and set an Olympic record and American record in the freestyle. Lisa Neal, who was pictured next, in her Olympic debut at the 2012 Olympics in London, she won a bronze medal in the 4x1 freestyle relay. Again, you see the stroke a lot of these swimmers are using as a freestyle. And again, as again, that's a stroke that you have to be very strong to work. In 2016, she won a silver medal at the same event at the Rio Olympics. Now we'd like to talk about Miles Simon. Miles Simon is the future of swimming. Miles Simon is a sophomore at Howard University. He's a native of Atlanta, and he qualified for the 2021 United States Olympic trials after making the cut in the 50-meter freestyle. This Atlanta native, he clocked a 23.11, just under the wave one cut of 23.19 to advance on. So when you look at the United States swimming pyramid, it goes by times. So the faster your time gets or you make the cut, you can move up. And obviously the fastest times make the national team. Simon was quoted as saying, swimming allowed him to feel and see what it's like to compete on the national level with world-class swimmers such as Ryan Lochte and Joseph Schooling. Even though this year's conditions could have given me the excuses he needed not to train, he's referencing COVID-19 pandemic. He understood what he needed to reach his goals. For his efforts and his hard work, Simon became the second Howard Bison swimmer in history to qualify for the United States Olympic trials, joining his current coach and director of swimming and diving at Howard, Nicholas Askew. Howard is a historically Black college and university. So again, highlighting the athletic achievements from individuals from historically Black colleges and universities outside of traditional sports of football and basketball is of importance. Hopefully someone will see this and the next generation of Black swimmers will evolve. In his first season swimming at Howard, Simon won 11 races while breaking a pair of school marks in the 100-meter individual medley at 51.68 and the 100-meter backstroke at 49.97. On October 22nd, 2019, the all-around Bison was named the Coastal Collegiate Sports Association Swimmer of the Week. Mr. Simon looks to join fellow Bison LaTroya Pina at the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. Miss Pina earned her ticket back in 19 as part of the first ever Cape Verdean Olympic swim team. Howard has a lot of, outside of individuals that grew up in this country, has a lot of dignitaries' kids that work with United Nations from around the globe, different countries, individuals of African descent throughout the diaspora. And she swims for Howard as well, but as a native of Cape Verde. And that's the island we were discussing, Maya and Greg, before we were talking about. There's Mauritius, Cape Verde, and the Seychelles. Those are the three islands, Maya. So she's a native of Cape Verde, so she's going to swim for them. Final thoughts closing out. Knowledge itself helps one learn from the past, present, and the future. So having this knowledge itself will keep you on track and not lead you to stray to fall victim of things that are not from your culture and are not meant to improve you. Having knowledge also can inform you of things when conversations come up to give you a perspective greater than what the world teaches you, which is slavery. And then instead of looking at the world since the beginning of time, which was a showcase African excellence. Having a long history in aquatics, individuals of African descent should embrace their contributions and innovations in aquatics and spread them throughout the world. Teaching this history to the next generation will increase participation in the sport as well as innovation. Just like hockey and other sports, baseball, hopefully more participation by individuals of African descent will increase the quality of swimming in this country as well. Thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. Again, I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of SportsZone Chicago's other shows. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon store. I will see you next week on our normally scheduled time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, signing off for Sports 101. Have a blessed week, and I look forward to talking with you next week. And I'm gone.